Yeah, hi and welcome everyone to the panel Rising Stars, the Unicorns of Tomorrow, ? I have 4 really interesting founders with me today, and they will introduce themselves to you really shortly. And then we'll start our discussion, and I want to do this a little bit more dynamic, so if you guys have questions, we have 2 mics wandering around, you can interrupt us. So maybe Tobias, do you want to start?
Hey, my name is Tobias Eichenwald. I'm one of the co-founders of Senic. We're a hardware and software startup based down the street, basically. So we put electronics, sensors, microphones, those kind of things in everyday objects like a table, but also beautifully designed objects to basically create the body for this tsunami of AI or home assistance that is going to hit us. And the first product we built is, a lot of people call it Nest for the Rest. It's kind of like a programmable controller for all your connected devices, so you can interact with your Sonos speakers or your Philips Hue. Yeah, we should just ship the first 5,000 devices, and we're also manufacturing down the street.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I take over. My name is Alex. I'm co-founder of a company called Celonis. We are based in Munich, not in Berlin, but I'm originally from Berlin, so a little funny. What we are doing is we are a B2B software company. So we sell to companies. And the kind of value we try, so it's a big data analytics company, and the kind of value we provide to our customers is obviously every company wants to improve, right? They want to have higher output with lower throughput times, higher customer satisfaction, and we help them do that. So it's a little bit like you want to improve because you want to become fitter, right? And you could have an app who tells you which workouts to do and how to do it better, so you could have a smart fitness app, and we are the same for the managers of a company. So we look at everything the company does, because all of that leaves data, so everything the employees do processing orders, producing goods, etc., and give automated recommendations, learn from that, and give them recommendations. Hey, here your throughput time is broken, here you just mess up because you need too long, right? You should do it faster. Or you do it well in every market, but in this particular market you don't, right? And this kind of insight we provide in an automated and real-time way to our customers. And we have a lot of companies using it, so hundreds of customers, like really big ones like Bayer, Siemens, Nestle, UBS, etc., from all different industries, also smaller to mid-sized companies. So yeah, that's what we do.
And you're so far completely bootstrapped, right?
Yeah, completely bootstrapped, yeah.
How many employees do you have?
So we are a little more than 80 now, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And not 1880, yeah, because my English is not so good. Okay.
So we're not bootstrapped. I'm Bastian, founder and managing director of Movinga. What we're doing with Movinga is basically bringing technology and data into the removals market, largely under-automated, incredibly fragmented, and very, very intransparent market. We're offering customers a more convenient, easier, and more affordable way to book a reliable and good moving experience. And on the other side, we work together with an array of vetted network partners, which we help basically to grow with us, but also become more profitable due to much better capacity utilization. And yeah, we founded the business roughly a year ago, took it to roughly 500 employees, and are not roughly, but are currently active in 7 markets.
Hi, my name is Felix. I'm the founder of Homebell.com, and in one sentence, we're building the global brand for home improvement.
That was quick. Congrats. Okay, thanks everyone. So my question for you is, since you have companies that are considered to be quite promising, do you guys want to build unicorns? Is that an explicit goal?
Maybe I can start on this one. I think it's not like that I would like to build a unicorn per se. I want to build a huge company, but I wouldn't like, for instance, if there's like a financing round happening and there's VCs offering like great valuations, like making Movinga a unicorn, I wouldn't take those at the expense of accepting protective provisions, of accepting like crazy liquidation preferences. So I think the fact of having like a $1 billion valuation itself doesn't really create value from itself. I think it's a milestone, but I think it's not our ultimate goal to create a $1 billion company, but rather a big firm. And likewise, similar to Felix, create a global brand.
I would say the same thing. I think it plays very nicely into what Bastian said. So what you want to do is you want to change something, right? You want to disrupt a market or create a new market. So Bastian wants to help people to move because moving is a pain in the ass, right? I recently moved and it was a pain in the ass. So what we want to help customers with is becoming more efficient, right? Using all the data they have to run their companies in a better way. And if you take that vision and say, okay, we really want to execute on that vision, you probably end up being big if it works. Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't, you don't. But if it works, so you'll be considered a unicorn. But it's not a self-fulfilling thing, right? It's not you want to build a unicorn, that's what you do, right?
I do agree.
Do you guys have any role models?
So I would say that I wouldn't name it an explicit role model, but definitely you have like your product should be like Apple, and your marketing, and obviously, I mean, you have role models. But I think if you look at the DAX, right, a very sad thing about the DAX is that there's only one company which has kind of been founded in the last 50 years or so, which is SAP, right? It's the only startup who made it to the DAX, right? Because a lot of the German startups sold out or didn't follow a really big disruptive global vision. So I think to be successful as an economy, we need to create companies again that become really big. And the US is doing that constantly with Google, Facebook. I mean, all kind of these large-scale companies who've recently been founded in the last couple of years. We in Germany, we just haven't done that for a very long time. And I think more and more founders are following that vision. They probably not all end up in the DAX, but at least you try and become pretty big, right?
So is it even possible to build really big and solid companies in Germany? You've been to the US, Tobias.
Yeah. So because smart home is really just happening in the US right now. The US is about 3 years ahead of Europe when it comes to smart home. So it's our main market. And that's what we focus on, and I really believe as long as you solve a problem that people care about or meet a desire that people want, it really doesn't matter. I mean, there's like limitations like funding, and you got to sort this out, especially for a hardware startup like ours. But I don't see a problem with that. I mean, we want to prove it because there's not a lot of good examples for it, but I think so.
Think about Daimler, BMW. They've also all been founded at some point, right? And
yeah,
it
at some
became
point.
Yeah, but that was 150 years ago. And companies have been founded who became huge, right? And we haven't done that for a long time.
And maybe in a few months, years, who knows? Also, Zalando will be a part of DAX.
Yeah, of course.
So I think it's not a structural thing. I think there is a lot of advantages: better access to capital, better access to talent in the US, but I think structurally it's also possible to build such firms in Germany. I mean, there is a few unicorns, there is a few very large companies really changing things. So I think it's possible, and it's the chances and the opportunities are growing.
You have very different funding structures. So many founders tell me that the more investors they take in, the more difficult it is to actually pursue the idea of where the company should go, because you get all these interests and that you somehow have to accommodate. How do you deal with this? I mean, I guess, Alex, that's not a problem for you. So maybe you can share, your experiences. But I mean, you guys, don't you get a lot of pressure from different sides, and how do you handle this?
I mean, that kind of goes in line with the very first thing I've been stating. I think like when only looking at valuations when doing funding rounds, you'll end up having a lot of protective provisions, a downside protection for VCs, and a lot of governance. And if you not only optimize for valuation, but also like the actual terms underlying the valuation, I think you can make sure to stay in control of the firm. And I think like I mean, we're not having like majority investors. I think maybe the same applies to Felix. We're not having a majority investors, but venture capitalists that invest into founding teams and therefore support. And I think it's always great for us. It's great to have access to those resources, to pull resources when necessary. But I think it's rather strategic input. So I think we're not discussing like operational topics, but strategic decisions where we can get a lot of good input actually.
Yeah, and for us, I mean, I haven't seen a bootstrapped hardware startup yet. That's kind of impossible. And for us, the good thing, so when we got our first money was through YC, and YC really sets standards for investment. So basically, every investor we have, they all have the same documents. Nobody has different terms, and those documents are publicly available, and they really care about the founders. So they have
YC is Y Combinator, an accelerator program for those who don't know.
Yeah, and that really protects you. I mean, obviously we shouldn't be stupid about certain things, but we really have the freedom to do whatever we believe in, and that's why people invested in us.
Do you think it's harder for hardware startups to grow?
Yeah, I mean, on average, to launch hardware products, you need 7 people versus like a designer and a coder, maybe for a software startup. Instead of spending 2 months to release a product, you need at least a year to a year and a half. So it's very capital intensive. If you screw up, you're fucked. Like you cannot make many mistakes. Like the hardware product needs to be perfect. It needs to really, people need to like it. And there's just not many people who have experience with investing in hardware. That's like in Germany, it's basically non-existent. That's why all the hardware investment is either happening in the US or in China.
Mm. So you kind of have to focus on the product before you try to grow, right? I think you guys might more be on the side, we focus on growth and then we, perfect our product. Where do you see the pros and cons with this approach?
So for us, I mean, at the very beginning, I think it doesn't make sense to focus like with marketplaces. It doesn't make sense to build like the best product out there and then find out that no one wants to use your product. So basically, I think at the very beginning, there's different stages. At the very beginning, it's about like proving that there's a business model, that there's a supply side that's working, a demand side that's working, and for doing so, I think you don't need the most sophisticated model, not the most sophisticated product. And then I think after maybe raising your first round, where you've shown that there is a business model, a potential business model that you were able to get initial traction, I think then it's kind of a turning point where you really want to make sure that processes are scalable. Because I think in the very beginning, if you find out that process is not working properly, you can just shift all resources of the entire firm on this particular process and fix it. And at some point, you have to fix the root cause, and that's why at some point it's not only about product, but it's a general thing that you, at the very beginning, maybe have a lot of focus on strong top-line growth, but after a while, invest heavily into technology, into a great product, into proper, sustainable processes, I would say.
Can that hurt your reputation, though? I mean, when you don't have only amazing reviews on Trustpilot, let's put it this way, you have quite some angry customers there as well. So isn't that something that, you should have thought of before?
I think, what we're doing is basically improving every day, improving the service every day, improving our partner level every day, getting our partners every day on the next level. So I think it's a continuous improvement process, and I think looking at how our customer satisfaction looks like, it's constantly improving. It's, I think, on a very decent level, and I think it's not really a question related to focusing on product or growth, but a general thing that comes with marketplaces and where you constantly improve to be able to offer a reliable experience to every single customer.
I think if you look at if you're a software company, right, and you think about, shall I focus on product or on growth? I think the answer is definitely not to only focus on product, because a lot of startups focus on product for a year or so, and then they go out and chase customers, and that doesn't work because you build something so a startup has to grow. I think a startup always has to grow. If you don't grow, you're dead, right? And this is true for bootstrap startup or for VC-backed startup. That really doesn't matter. That depends on the market, but you need to grow. On the other hand, you also need to build a great product because you need customer success, especially in our space. Yeah, I mean, if you grow to the scale Bastian grows this company in 1 year, I mean, then you can lose some. Yeah, but I mean, you can't make everybody happy if you have. But in the enterprise business where you win like 20, 30, 40 customers the first year, you have to make them happy, or at least most of them. Otherwise, you lose your reputation. And so the problem is you need to focus on growth, but also have a product that works and customers are successful. And I think in order to balance the two, the only thing you can do is focus. You really need to focus on one specific problem. And so many startups say, okay, I got this great product, and if I build this, and some AI there, and some VR there, and blah, 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 then it works. Yeah? And that's bullshit. You need to focus on one problem, and you need to solve it, and you need to build a very, very focused product that works, and then you need to grow. And then you need to improve and can do new things. So that's my opinion. Yeah?
I think there's actually most of you guys, I'm super happy that there's so many of you around today that are thinking about starting a company, and I think we all can highly encourage you to do so because it's actually a lot of fun. And I think that the starting point is actually to think of where is actually a need, right? Where is something that needs to be improved, right? So whether it's software, whether it's a device, whether it's a service, right? There's always a need, and from that need derives a solution, right? And that solution, then whether you do it on your own, which I highly admire, or whether you find investors that share the vision and basically have the same vision for your company. I think in the end, it's all about like making something better, improving something, and that's kind of what funnels into a great company.
Well, I mean, I think we can see what happens to having vision in the US right now when interest rates go up. Suddenly, you can read in all the VC blogs that profitability gets more important. Are you scared that this, might come to Germany faster than you want to?
I think, generally speaking, public markets are struggling. That translates into private markets. And I mean, actually, it's a thing that makes kind of sense to look at a path to profitability, look at solid unit economics, especially with our business model, because customers are not moving that often. We haven't got so many recurring revenues and repeat customers. So I think with us, we always focus on proving like solid unit economics, that we're actually making money by moving people. And I think that's a general thing that makes sense also for the firms. And going back to the topic we're discussing, basically, I think it kind of goes away from that culture unicorns breed, but rather goes back to what actually makes sense from a business perspective. Is there a business case? Mm-hmm. Is there unit economics that might work at some day? And I think that's not a bad thing per se.
And especially is a unit economics in the future is going to be highly profitable, right? Because if you start a company, right, you're looking at the future. So not necessarily that you have to be profitable at the moment, but in the future you have to show that your unit economics, so basically that every order that you're generating is going to be profitable, right? So and that's a good thing to keep in mind, right? Starting a company without actually knowing how you're going to make money in the future, not saying you don't know how to make money right now, but how to make money in the future, I think is crucial for long-term success. And that's, I think we're in a beautiful situation that interest rates will stay very low also for the upcoming years in Europe. And most of the funds are already raised and they have to deploy their capital. So I think in Europe, for all of you guys, it's a fantastic situation to think about starting a company because it's fairly easy if you compare it to 2009 when I came to Berlin to raise capital. And I think also there's a lot more knowledge around, right? So it's a lot easier to raise capital and there's a lot more people that have started companies that are now around. There's a lot of tech talent that came to Berlin that's now available to help you grow with your companies. And I think that's exactly the reason why, because the network is a lot better than it used to be like 6, 7, 8 years ago, why we're now seeing so many successful companies out of Berlin.
And if there's a crisis, you should go out and start a company because so many good companies have been started in the time of crisis. A lot. It's really,
I mean, look at Portugal, for instance. There's amazing companies coming from Portugal. There's Farfetch, an amazing marketplace, I think. There's Uniplaces. And those companies have been risen from a pure crisis, like unemployment, youth unemployment is crazy in Portugal.
And I also think probably the crisis, if we have a crisis, I don't know, but if there would be a major or minor, I think we see less of the crazy stuff happening. There's some, not so much in Germany, but in the US, there's some crazy stuff happening, like startups raising incredible valuations when they don't really have the track record to prove it. But I think like a solid company will be funded, probably a little less worse terms, but not in terms of valuation. But it's not a reason not to start a company. Yeah.
So do you guys have a plan B for bad times for your companies in the pocket?
Always gotta have plan B and C and D. So we think like, okay, what could happen in the next couple of months? So I can adjust this, I can prepare this product, I could launch this, I could do crowdfunding campaign, I could do that's how we basically think. It's based on, like, it's always like you have a clear vision, but the path is never defined. So I'm expecting to go that way.
Okay. You said in a quite recent interview with us that every startup statistically has 2 near-death experiences before it becomes stable. So I'm not sure if you guys already had some of these, but maybe you can share how that happened and how you overcame those obstacles.
Yeah, sure. So I basically explained that before we did a crowdfunding campaign, and before that at some point we had about 2 weeks of money left, which is actually a very typical story, especially like out of the YC network. You get all the itsy bitsy of like really giant companies that were in a very similar situation. But that's just how it is, and that's what I look and where I see a correlation between really good founders and what happened to them is like they have survived this and they always just find a way to figure things out. That's what makes people strong, I believe.
So what was your way out?
Crowdfunding, yeah. That's the one bet we put everything on, basically.
Yeah.
But there's also different options.
I also have a good we've always been near death a couple of times. I mean, we've been bootstrapped, so we had less margin forever. And I remember, like, the first year, I think, we did around $1 million in revenue, which was incredible for us. I mean, we were just out of college, and, you know, software is, it's pure profit nearly. So we thought, wow, we got $1 million in revenue and just low cost base. So let's hire experienced salespeople, right? So we went out and hired salespeople from Oracle and Microsoft and SAP and all these big companies. And then we onboard, and we paid headhunters like crazy fees to onboard them and everything. And then we had this kind of very senior sales team. And turned out they sold nothing, right? They sold nothing for a year. Yeah? The problem is if you work for Oracle, I mean, people need Oracle software, so you don't have to. It's not like going out and selling stuff, right? So they were, they were not a good fit for us. And so we burned a lot of the money we had in the bank on the sales force. And if you burn money on a sales force, it's fucked up if they don't sell, because you don't get revenues. And then we threw them out, and they ended up suing us and everything. And we had legal fees, and we were really fucked there. But we had a good core. We had a great product. We had customers who loved it, and we just I ended up driving, I think, 100,000 kilometers that year, selling on my own, and my co-founders as well. And we still grew, and we kind of compensated, and that was a great learning experience. So one thing we learned from that is hire great people, hire people that fit your culture, and I think it's always like a roller coaster, but you learn a lot from that. And if we hadn't survived, there would have been pity, but we still would have a great learning experience. Yeah.
I think like for us in the very beginning, like where we came from, I moved 8 times in 3 years throughout my studies, and I founded the company together with my flatmate from my studies, and we basically started simply intermediating students as Movinga helpers. And we thought, okay, Movinga helpers tend to be sometimes a little bit shady. It's a very intransparent industry. It's sometimes unprofessional. They are maybe not the most reliable ones. So maybe let's just hire students and take those students, take just like a clean fixed fee per hour, and just intermediate those students. Back then, Homejoy was still just received funding from Sequoia, and we thought, okay, yeah, it might be a great vertical. And when we started out building like a very, very lean product, as we were focusing on growth first, we basically went out and tried to speak to as many customers as possible, but found out that customers didn't perceive students as very, very reliable and trustworthy Movinga helpers, but rather as some kind of academics that couldn't lift their household stuff. And so basically I think there was in February last year, and then we had like we realized, okay, like customers don't really want those things. Looking at the financials, I mean, if we only intermediate those, customers have to come back a lot of times. Customer lifetime has to be much higher than it is actually with moving. So there wasn't really looking back, it was a very, very shitty idea. And so basically, I think then we just like sat together and said, I talked to Chris, my co-founder, and we said, okay, why are we basically focusing on the small scale moving, such a small fraction of the market, if we basically can aim for the entire market and offer full service moving and take professional moving firms, helping them to grow with us, but also become more profitable. And I think this was like the pivot we've made, where we've also been thinking about, okay, is there a business model? Can we actually build a case on moving? Is there unit economics that might work out at someday? And I think that was one of those moments when we shifted, and since then working in the way we're working with Movinga.
Mm-hmm. Felix, maybe you can share something that you've learned from founding Mobile Event Guide that you worked on many years for, quite hard, I believe, and then you left the company last summer, and it went bankrupt half a year later. So what would you take from that experience that you learned for your new company now?
Well, I left in 2014, so about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And the key learning is that never hire McKinsey consultants as managing directors.
Agreed.
So that's the core learning for it. So I think in essence, it comes down to to the team and to the people, right? So make sure that you hire a very entrepreneurial team. So as soon as you hire people that have a great, as Andreas mentioned, that come from companies with great names, right? You're a startup essentially, so you have a very agile environment where you work very hard to develop a solution. And unfortunately, if you work for too long for a consultancy, you're very good at politics. So if that's combined with a startup, there's a lot of loss in efficiency because people will start talking to each other about politics and not about solutions. And I think that's very, very important for every one of you who goes out and starts a company, that you find a team with people that are like-minded and don't have an ego, right? Because in our company now, it doesn't matter if the cleaning lady has the best idea or if one of the founders has the idea, we'll pursue the best idea, right? And that's crucial to success, that you actually keep egos out of the decision-making process and try to find the best solution possible. And I think that's also the reason why we're growing so fast at the moment. And additionally, you always have to be very flexible. And I was actually 2 weeks ago talking to one of the NASA researchers that's now basically shooting satellites to another galaxy. And he said, our success is based on launch often and launch early, right? So try things out. I think that's the core advice that I can give you today. If you're starting a company, try it on a small scale. Try to sell it to your friends, to your peers. See if they're interested. And if there is a need for them, right? If they need it, you see that you've developed a great product that receives traction. And then it makes sense to scale, right? And that's something you can very, very easily do from your living room, from your dorm room, and see if there's traction, right? I mean, you guys founded the company in the dorm room. I don't know how it's about you. We founded Homebell from my living room. So it's always, once you see that there's traction, there's customers that actually like the product, and you're generating quality and service and a great customer experience for these customers, then you know that there's a business to it. And I think that's probably the best advice that I can give from my past experience.
I mean, you guys are all very young. Isn't it sometimes extremely scary to take responsibility for so many people that work for you, and to make the right decisions, to stay on the right track? How do you overcome, if you ever doubt yourself?
I think it's more of an exciting thing. It gives you a lot of adrenaline. It really pushes you to work hard to achieve great things. And I think regarding what Felix has just mentioned, I think what's very, very important is getting very, very motivated, getting people that are very humble, but also as driven as you are in from the early days, and handing over as much of the workload you have to those guys as possible. I think a lot of founders basically stick all, want to do everything on themselves, which doesn't really make sense, I think. So what we've done, I think we also try to hire as much for potential and not for experience. So we've got on board fairly young people who are as driven and as we are, very smart and very, very humble on the same side. And I think giving them as much responsibility as possible really makes it possible to manage the workload as a founder as well.
Okay. I mean, you've been in the news recently because the state attorney is investigating against Movinga. Isn't that scary? I mean, how do you communicate that? How do you deal with this?
I mean, obviously, I won't comment on like particular prosecutions, but I think what is important for us is that I mean we're very, very fast growing, and what is like the relevant thing for us is that there is people taking care of such things, and they will end up picking a good decision. And I myself, and I know that there hasn't been any criminal proceedings, so I think there's always stuff going on. There's always some white noise. I think it's always very important to have very, very good people. You can really that are as driven as you are, that really give 100% to build a great firm together with you, and B, I think to focus on what's important, and I think that's operational KPIs.
Yes. So is it scary, the responsibility? I think. Of course, and that's why you keep moving, right? And I think I can just reiterate what Bastian said and emphasize it. I think as a founder of a company and as a CEO, there needs to be one thing you need to be good at, and that's motivate people for your vision, motivate your customers, your employees, potentially your investors if you have them. So motivate and be a reiterer of the vision of the company, right? And get people excited about it. And then it's so true that you should hire hungry people. Always go for talent versus experience. I mean, I just told the story where I learned it the hard way, but that was the best learning. So if anybody goes for founding a company, don't look for experience, look for talent, because experience can always be very humbling if you don't have one. Experience yourself, right? So you think, oh, this guy must be so experienced, so he knows it better. But it just doesn't fit your culture. Yeah? So try to build a great team and excited about your vision, and then if you screw up, then you just make sure that you did your best, right? And nobody will blame you. Yeah.
I agree 100% on this. I have like one concrete example. One, like actually our very first employee was an intern who studied together with us. We studied at a German business school, and he started as basically an intern during the summer months, didn't go into a consulting firm, didn't go into an investment bank, and the duration was 3 months, and he's still with us. He ended up not going back to uni, and I think like those are the guys you really can rely on when building a great firm. Like he has now a team of 45 people he is managing, and he's as driven as we are, and I think like the lack of experience he's making up for by simply working harder, I think.
Yeah, for me it's kind of, I mean, it's also the way we look at building a product. Like in the beginning, you're just like, whoa, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And it completely throws you off the grid, and you're like totally insecure and all these kind of things. But at some point, you start shifting from this process to where it's like, okay, these are the options, this is what we go next. And as long as you do the whole thing, like there's nothing to be scared of, because you're doing the best possible anyways. So if it still fails, then it still fails. But like you're learning every day, and it's the same for the team. Like we don't know what the answers are, so we just talk about it and just try a way to figure it out.
All right. Great. Thanks. You didn't interrupt us, but I want to give you the last 5 minutes for questions that you might have. Come on. I know it's hot in here. But you have
some air conditioners here.
4 great founders that you can ask anything that you ever wanted to know about them. Can we have a mic over here?
How did you get experience in very early stage of your startup? Did you work with mentors? Did you work with more experienced founders? What kind of deal did you do with them? Did you give them equity? Did you pay them something? What kind of support did you get on board?
I mean, when we started out, we had practically no experience about anything. So one particular example, which is good, is pricing. Right? How much does an enterprise software cost? How much does SAP cost? No idea, right? I mean, probably if you're not in the business, you don't have any idea. So I know when our first customer wanted to buy our solution, we were sitting there in my co-founder's flat and thinking about, okay, what are we going to offer them and what are we going to charge them? And I think I said like $5,000. And one of my co-founders said $100,000, or $200,000, right? And we had no idea what the right price would be, right? So Bastian, who's one of my co-founders, kind of negotiated me up to offering, I think, $110,000, right, for the software, which is not a lot for an enterprise software because it's so complex, yeah. But I was so scared. We were sitting in the meeting and handing over the proposal for the software, and I was, I was thinking, okay, this guy, I mean, that's one of the first customers will eventually trust us, and we offer him like such a huge price, and he'll probably throw us out of the window, not out of the door, but out of the window, right? And then it was a CIO of a company, and we offered them $110K, and he said, make it 105 and I'll buy it. And we said, okay. So that was obviously, looking back, I mean, you learn a lot by doing, and you should also get mentors. So if you have good investors, or you should also try to get mentorship. And if it's incredible if you ask somebody who has done something, I mean, and if you ask him, can you teach me a little bit? Can we go for coffee? Everybody will say yes. Yeah? So you should look for mentors. We probably didn't do that enough in the beginning, but then after a couple of months we did it a lot, and it's very helpful.
But also don't listen to everyone, because everybody has an opinion, but so many people don't know what you know. Like, just figure it out, try it. If you fail, you learn, you go on. But there's so much advice, like, don't listen to everything, because it can really redirect you into directions where you shouldn't go. And at some point you're like, oh, I had this feeling from the beginning, and then like turning back and following that.
How do you find out who to listen to, though?
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, you only know with time and reflecting on it. I usually just listen to people who don't talk a lot. That's the one thing.
Choice.
Like, people who are just like in your face, like, what you're doing is super stupid. Why the hell are you doing this? Like, just do this or figure it out, and then that's the whole talk. I usually tend to listen to people like that.
I think maybe quick point on this. I think like what is amazing as an opportunity as of now, there's so many entrepreneurs that have founded their companies, that have exited their companies, and there's a huge amount of business angels. You can raise your Series A, you can raise 7-digit amounts just from business angels. And I think depending on the business model, it makes a lot of sense. And like what we've done, we've got 20 different business angels on board, and I think it's in terms of listen and choosing who to listen to, I think like the company's strategy is something you always have to decide on your own or with your co-founder. I mean, you're spending 24 hours a day in working on that vision, so you're the best one to judge. But I think what's very helpful, like for instance, Felix was one of our first investor. So I think what's very helpful is getting like functional input. Like if there's a question about pricing, if there's like a question about BI setup, if there's a question about, I don't know, expansion strategies, you can get functional input from your investors. And depending on the business model, I would recommend to go with business angels that are actually willing to also to be approached by founders, basically.
And maybe to add to this, like ask people for advice, because from my own experience, if you've done it before and then you see people who are now trying to do the same thing a couple of years later and start their own company, and you know how hard it is, you're more than happy to help them out, right? Because you know from your own experience how challenging it is to start a new company. So I think everyone you ask in Berlin is willing to give you advice, right, and help you out. And so look for people you can ask for advice, and then the thing that's going to happen immediately, if they think you're building a great business, you know, they'll ask you if they can invest, right? So you have an investor, and then you have valuable input from people you like, right? That you've chosen to ask for advice, that are even committed with their own money to help you. And I think we can encourage all of you in this room to start your own company. And I think each and every one of us is more than happy to help you out. So if you have any questions, just shoot us an email, and we'll be more than happy to assist you in starting your own company.
These are some nice last words, because time is up. So thanks, everyone.